guys, what's up? It's Callista, and today I'm going to be walking you guys through migration. So when you are new to Lords Mobile, you do get a novice relocator as part of your kind of freebie package, and that basically lets you relocate to any kingdom as long as you pass the level 6. Now, I think the vast majority of you guys, when you first started, I know I did, you don't really know where to go, right? And you're kind of like, oh, I have this relocator, should I use it, should I stay? And some of the pros and cons of staying are that the kingdom where you originally spawn will have players that are all starting around the same time. So something to be mindful of if you're thinking about going to one of the older kingdoms is everyone is going to be considerably stronger than you because they have more time playing the game, both free-to-play and pay-to-play players. So keep that in mind. I would recommend that unless you have another reason for switching kingdoms early on in the game, I would stay where I've spawned. It will have most players around your level for a while, right? Until some people start dropping some Boku bucks. But at least everything is pretty kind of on par with each other. However, as the game progresses, you might have different reasons for thinking about moving or migrating to another kingdom. So I'm going to give you guys some tips and tricks in terms of how you can research different kingdoms, even if you don't know anyone in that kingdom at that time, as well as just, well, how do you do it, right? So let's start with the easy thing. And I think the easy thing is just kind of how do you execute a migration. So you're going to need, once you're post castle level 6, you are going to need migration scrolls, and you can get migration scrolls one of two ways. The first way that you can get migration scrolls is through purchasing packs. So typically after a KVK, they do have a pack that I believe is called Up and Away, something to that effect. And you can purchase migration scrolls that way, and the packs are very similar to the other packs. They start at $4.99 US dollar wise, and they move up from there, and you get a different number of scrolls depending on which pack you buy. The other way is through guild coins. So if you go to your bag and you go to the guild coin section, you can kind of scroll all the way to the bottom, and you can see migration scrolls. And migration scrolls cost 810,000 guild coins. So quite expensive, right? So if you are thinking about migrating, this is the free-to-play way to get scrolls. You're going to need an active guild so you can accumulate enough migration scrolls to move. But those are the two ways right now in the game that you have to move. Something to be mindful of is if you plan on buying them through packs, they're not on sale the entire month. They're on sale very specific times of the month, usually right after a KVK for whatever reason, because maybe you've explored other kingdoms that you want to go to. So keep that in mind. Now, another thing to be mindful of is when you migrate, your Coliseum rank is going to start from 0. So you're going to basically start at the very, very bottom of the ranking system in your new kingdom. Another thing to be mindful of is you cannot take all your RS with you, and you are going to be prompted by the system when you try to migrate, and it will let you know both your Coliseum rank will be reset, as well as you're only able to take a certain number of RS with you. What that means is you can take all of the resources that you have in your packs. That's totally fine. This is more so referring to the RS that you have on the upper right of your screen, so you can see right now, depending on what that prompt would tell me, I'm not going to be able to take all of it. If you were to, let's say, have a billion or out of packs in that upper right hand corner open and you migrate, you basically just lose it. So you want to be mindful to not open too many packs if you're thinking about migrating, and keeping that number pretty fairly small. Now that you know kind of at a high level how to do this, the first question that I would have when I'm thinking about migrating is, where do I go and why? What I would recommend is, depending on where you are from a might perspective, keep that in mind, because the kingdom that you end up landing in, the cost of the scroll will depend on what your might is in the new kingdom. So if you are within the top 50 players of the kingdom that you are going to, not where you're starting, but where you want to go, you are going to need to pay more than one migration scroll. That's why they have those packs, right? Now, if you are to very easily go ahead and Google Lords Mobile migration, the very first thing that should come up should be your wiki. And your wiki is basically going to tell you the rank in your target kingdom and how many scrolls are required. So let's say you're moving to a kingdom where you're very mighty and you're going to be the #1 player in the kingdom. You would need 90 migration scrolls to make that happen, which is insane, right? I would say I've migrated to kingdoms where I've been in the 40s. I think the most scrolls I've needed has been 8. I remember that. I think I was like number 29 or number 30 in the kingdom that I was going to, and I ended up needing 8 scrolls, right? So you're either going to save guild coins for a really long time, or you're going to be purchasing them through packs. But this is a really great chart. I highly recommend it. I'll include the URL. It's lordsmobile.wikia.com, so you can easily check out how many scrolls it would take depending on what your might is. Now, the first question that everyone has is, well, how do I know what my might is going to be in this new kingdom? And that is a great question. There isn't an easy way to do that as of yet in the game. I highly recommend before you migrate that you already have the guild that you want to join at least in mind, right? And this depends on your might and whether you're going to qualify to get into some of the bigger guilds. If you do qualify to get into some of the bigger guilds, you can easily mail them and just ask them, hey, what is the top 50th player's might in your kingdom? And then you can figure out if you're going to need more than 1 scroll. When you're trying to migrate, if you don't have enough scrolls, it will also prompt you and let you know how many scrolls you do need. So that is another way to do it. Now, how do you figure out what kingdom you're going to go to? For me, I am an English player. I also speak Spanish. However, I do prefer to be in English-speaking guilds because I'm more comfortable communicating in English. For me, it's pretty important that I go to a kingdom where there is a strong English presence from a language perspective, because I want to be able to communicate with my guild mates. So something that I like to do is, as I'm kind of scouting different kingdoms, I am looking at who is holding base. Now, it is not pivotal that an American or English or international English-focused guild, right, that uses English as their primary method of communication is holding the base, right? It's hard to hold the base. But it is important that they're somewhere either holding a base or holding a fort, or, and this is the interesting thing and why maybe it takes me a little bit longer to figure out where I want to go. Let's assume that it's a foreign guild that is holding the base and holding the majority of the forts. Maybe it's a few foreign guilds and you're not really sure whether there's a strong English-speaking presence in that kingdom. I would recommend figuring out who is getting the bad title. So you go into the base, and let me show you how you can do that. So you're going to go to the base, and you can do this for any kingdom. It doesn't have to be yours. You click vassal titles, and you already know kind of who is owning the base, but check out who is contesting for the base. So who are the enemies for this particular alliance, right? So I've gone to kingdoms where maybe the English-speaking alliance is not holding the base, but they're getting all the debuffs. So they're contesting for it, right? Like, you're gonna give the bad titles typically to alliances that you don't like all that much, that are in an active war with you. I'm all good with going to kingdoms where there is an active war. I think that there are times, and it might make sense for you to be, depending on where you are in your growth, it might make sense for you to be in a more peaceful kingdom, but it is a war game, right? So you want to make sure that you're able to use those troops, not just kind of troop bake all day long. So I would say I always go check out who's holding the base, check out who is not well liked by those holding the base, see what those guilds are like. I also highly recommend checking their boards to see what their NAP and ally lists look like. I've also been in kingdoms where the entire kingdom is almost napped with each other, and it makes for a very boring game, right? Like, you can't raid, you can't burn people, you can't attack, you can't do much. I've also been in kingdoms where they rotate base, so nobody's even fighting for base there. And if that's your style, that's totally fine. It's an individual preference. But if you want to be in a kingdom where there's some action, you want to make sure that people are getting debuffed, right? You want to make sure that the ally and nap lists are not incredibly long, so I definitely recommend doing that. I also recommend, if you're a smaller player, maybe try to avoid some of the really old kingdoms. And if you go to, let's see, if you go to the world ranking, so you go to the ranking, you click your upper left button, you can kind of see where the mightiest guilds currently reside. So you can see right now in Kingdom 32, you have some of the strongest guilds there. You have A2Z, JVT, You have M44. You have some really big guilds there, right? And you can easily tell which ones you're going to be able to communicate with, whether or not they're speaking your language. Do your homework before you go, right? So for somebody like me, K32 may not make that much sense, right? Right now I am in K38, so you can see that's the third strongest guild, BRR. But you can kind of just take a look quickly to see, you know, where are the mightiest guilds? What kingdoms are those? And then make your decision depending on your might, whether or not you want to be there yet. And this is the thing, you can migrate, you know, every few months, depending on where you are and what you're looking for. You don't necessarily have to commit here. So that's another thing to be mindful of, is it's not like you're going to migrate once in your kind of lifespan of this game. You might migrate a few times. You might also migrate as a guild. And that's another thing that I want to talk about, is if your guild decides to migrate, the R5, so the guild leader, needs to also change this designation to make their new kingdom their kind of home base. I would also recommend that the stronger players in the guild migrate first, because that is going to impact how many migration scrolls the rest of your members are going to need. Now, this is only important if you have a substantial amount of members that might be in the top 50. Typically, guilds are moving to kingdoms where they feel like they can take over, they can be a stronger presence. So oftentimes they are looking for kingdoms that will be in general newer, or might be a bit weaker, which means that the guild coming in will have a substantial number of players potentially. Let's say you have 5 players that are all going to be in the top 50. You would want your strongest player to come first, because they will be able to help the weaker players go further down in that top 50 list and pay less migration scrolls. If it's the other way around, you're not going to be able to help your top guy pay less migration scrolls anyway. So it just makes more sense, you know, sharing is caring. Let the top guy go first, and he's going to be able to impact some of the weaker players that might still be in that top 50. That is all for now. If you have any additional suggestions, comments, questions on this subject matter, please feel free to put them down below. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and thank you so much for watching.